Thank you for joining us for our third Advent devotion. This one coming from Almost Christmas, a Wesleyan Advent experience. The devotion we'll be sharing today addresses John Wesley's question, do I practice godly behavior? And the devotion was written by Reverend DJ Del Rosario. And so let's jump into the text, shall we? DJ tells us that when her children were born, one of the values that she and her family wanted to instill in them was this idea of deep empathy. The question that they focused on was, how do you teach children to care deeply for those who are not like themselves? And how do you help them learn to see and imagine what it might be like to be someone totally different? Over the past decade, prior to writing this, she says she had learned quite a few different ways to practice this value of empathy, but one of their favorites was to fill gallon-sized resealable bags with items that they had learned over the years that people in their community both needed and wanted. And so it had things like clean socks, Starbucks gift cards, healthy snacks, just to name a few things. And as they would meet individuals and share names and share stories, they would share these gifts. Something else they had learned was the value of writing notes and prayers that weren't patronizing, but rather focused on honoring the humanity and the dignity in each person they met and encountered. So she says that when she began reflecting on John Wesley's question, do I practice godly behavior? She feels we do well if it leads to the practice of empathy. So one of the beautiful traits of God, according to DJ, was that we worship this God who is deeply empathetic with God's creation, so much so that God was emptied out for all of creation. And she turns our attention to the words of Paul, and recorded there in Philippians 2:6-8, who being in the very nature of God did not consider equality with God to be something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing. By taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in appearance of man, he humbled himself, and becoming obedient even to death, even death on a cross. Some of my favorite words contained in the New Testament. And she reminds us that this Advent season, we worship God who leans into who we are as creation, as we seek God who loved us first. There are so many wonderful and challenging aspects of the behavior of God that we can read about in the Hebrew Scriptures and the New Testament, she tells us. But one of the most powerful that comes to her mind is that God came to us humbly, even as a newborn child. So we might love Jesus, who walked the same path we walk, who suffered as we suffer, and who loved perfectly. In this season of Advent, she would ask us what it means that God leans into creation. What does it mean to us that God leans into creation? God who's loved manifested in Jesus the Christ. God's whose behaviors are beyond our wisdom and whose actions of love and grace are known through his Son, Jesus. She asked this question, how do God's actions challenge, encourage, and mold who we are today as we journey toward this wondrous birth of Jesus? In this Advent season, we are called to personal holiness and reflection as we consider God's loving behavior for all of creation. We are also challenged to consider God's love beyond our individual needs and personal devotion. If your spiritual gallon bag were to be filled today, she asks us, what would you place in it? Would you add items of comfort for those in need to experience God's presence? Would you focus on substance to feed those around you so that they might know your actions match your intentions? What would you write in each note to reflect the amazing grace of God that God offers? So as we begin this day, our third devotional day, she invites us to thank God for the many ways in which God leans into us, loves us, and seeks us. She challenges us to offer to God all that we are and all that we might ever be in the name of Jesus. It's a good word to share this third Advent day. Blessings.